Hi, Sean Oskay, Professor of Design at Southern Oregon University. The next in our design series of lectures today about theme and the world of the play and all those papers we make you write, whether it's a director's prospectus or a design concept paper for a particular class. I think a lot of people make this more complicated than it needs to be, and hopefully this will help. So let's quickly define these briefly, and then we'll go into them in a little bit more depth. So theme is simply what the play is about. What's the main idea of the story? All art, whenever somebody creates something, it has some purpose behind it, right? Unless it's kind of a mindless doodle or something. Typically, an artist has some idea behind it. They may not even be fully aware of what that idea is, but a poet or a songwriter or somebody writing a novel or a movie script or painting a big painting, whatever, somebody has put some thought into what it means. And that's certainly true with playwrights. Our playwrights are part of the collaborative team, right? They had an idea that made them write this play. So we want to use script analysis to find out what that theme is. Now, it doesn't need to be the same theme for every production of that play, and you can have themes that apply to many different plays. But we really want to see, what's this story about? What's the idea? And then that's going to take us on to the world of the play. And then that's a term that's not universal, but a lot of people use it, and I like it a lot. World of the play simply means, how does the things on stage need to make us feel? What emotions are we trying to evoke in the audience? So Hamlet is going to feel a lot different than a romantic comedy that you might do. That's all part of the world of the play. That's going to be a lot about adjectives and a lot of words that are descriptive. You can even reference, I would like all my designers to look at this painting or listen to the song or read this poem or whatever. Anything that's going to help establish the mood. And mood can be synonymous with world of the play. Some people use that term mood instead of world of the play. And then finally, you're going to just write what your decisions are going to be. If you're coming at it from a director's point of view, you're going to give your instructions to your various design departments and say, I would like the costumes to be like this and the sets to be like this, and so on. If you are one of those designers, then you're going to spend that last portion of your paper talking about the decisions that you're going to make in your particular area to help support the world of the play and the theme. Now, the paper that you're writing is kind of pyramid shaped. You can think of it as 3 paragraphs if you want, but they're not equal sized. I think the theme really can just be a couple of sentences. Get to the point right at the beginning, say, this play is about this. You don't need to tell us about the journey that you went on or what you thought on your first reading or what. Just say, this is a play about this. 2, maybe 3 sentences. You can get through theme. World of the play, the next section of your paper, is going to be a little bit more fleshed out. You're going to start saying specific things about how it needs to feel. All those adjectives, all those descriptive phrases. And then the biggest portion of your paper, that third portion, is going to be either your instructions as the director to your design departments, or if you are that designer, again, you're saying specifically, my set is going to be this, like the walls are going to be like this, and they're going to be painted these colors, and it's going to feel like this, and here are all the specific choices that I'm making to make it feel the way the world of the play needs to feel to support that theme. So theme is something specific. You can't just say mystery or simplicity. There's not enough to go on there. You also need to make it specific enough to the play that it's useful as well. To say overcoming obstacles to get what you want is kind of true of drama, right? That's basically what's going on in every play. The same thing would be true if you were to say, my theme is the antagonist and protagonist are in conflict until the conflict is resolved. Well, yeah, that's kind of the definition of drama, right? So that's not useful enough or specific enough as a theme. And the same thing is true if the terms are too short like that. So the theme doesn't have to be specific to that play. Remember we talked about you might do Hamlet at some point in your career, direct that play, and there's something going on in your life or the world or you're reading at your age, you might focus on a particular theme, and then 10 years later you do it again, and things are different. And you might find some other theme in the script. As long as it's coming from the script, you can have a different theme. You might also have a theme that applies to many plays, like the redemptive power of love might be a good example of a kind of theme that you could apply to dozens or hundreds of plays, right? So they don't have to be unique, they just have to be meaningful. So a theme could be, happiness is found in a simple life, or it's the simple things in life that make us happy, not the pursuit of material wealth or power, but simplicity alone is not a theme. See how the simplicity just means like, well, the play's really simple, it's like minimalistic? Well, no, it's about how happiness is found in a simple life. Oh, I get it. Okay, simple equals happy. That's more useful than just simplicity alone. The world of the play is not the setting or the given circumstances. That happens all the time where people mistake the world of the play means a basement room with 2 beds and 2 doors in England in the 1960s. That's the setting. So given circumstances, of course, is what we're doing when we go through the script, finding out what the playwright has said about where we are and when and what's happening in the world. So it's the living room of a middle-class home on Long Island in New York in 1982, and it's a rainy afternoon in October or whatever, right? Those are all the time and place and the who, what, when, where, and why. Those are the given circumstances. And some playwrights, like Tennessee Williams, takes 3 pages to write this very descriptive stuff before he gets onto the script. And you might open a script and it'll say present. And then that's it. And you got to move on and look through the text with your detective hat on to try to figure out what those given circumstances are. So setting is not the same thing as world of the play. So the world of the play might be a colorless, grimy, claustrophobic, windowless space full of shadows and obscured objects. The world of the play should be mysterious and vaguely threatening, but at the same time comically absurd. Now that's a good start for Harold Pinter's The Dumbwaiter, for example, a play you're probably familiar with. And that idea of the basement being a colorless, grimy, claustrophobic place is very different than a basement. A basement with 2 beds and no windows in London or Birmingham in the 60s could be a great place. It could be a terrific bachelor pad with all kinds of stylish furniture and cocktail bars and whatever and classy chandeliers. It could be a terrific place. But that's not the world of the play for The Dumbwaiter. That's not this kind of cold, creepy space that our character is in. So the setting is not the same thing as world of the play. And then finally, you're going to get to that last portion of your paper where you're going to say, to achieve that world of the play, the costumes will be simple gray flannel suits with sweat stains and slightly dirty and so on. The set will be cramped and cluttered. The lighting will be harsh and high contrast. The sound will be deep and reverberative. So those are all specific instructions from a director in their prospectus to the various design departments. Now, your version of this as a designer will just be answering the questions about, well, now how will my costumes or my set or whatever achieve that world of the play? So I'm going to use this kind of fabric and this kind of color palette with this kind of cut and this kind of shape and silhouette and be influenced by this particular fashion style or whatever. Those are all the things that I need to do in order to support that world of the play. Let's take an example of this. So for example, so there's probably a lot of various lines that could apply to the most famous lines from Wizard of Oz. Somewhere over the rainbow is probably one of them, right? But the 2 that I would nominate would be these.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
And think to yourself, there's no place like home. There's no place like home.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
So I would say that those are the 2 lines that are probably the most famous lines from Wizard of Oz, although you can make an argument for others. But one of those sounds a lot to me like the beginning of a concept, of a theme. There's an old saying that all stories can be boiled down to 2 main plots. I go on a journey.
I want to come with you to Alder. There's nothing for me here now. I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi like my father.
Or a stranger comes to town. So which one is Wizard of Oz? Now remember, it's from the point of view of Dorothy, not the residents of Oz, so it's really Dorothy going on a journey. Well, you might actually have a friend that's never seen Wizard of Oz, and they might ask you, well, what's it about? Well, you can answer that in one of two ways. Typically, the way that we answer that is by telling what the story is. Well, there's this girl, Dorothy, and she's having a bad day, and everybody thinks she's in the way, and the mean old lady down the street is angry because her dog, Toto, got into the garden again, and basically she wished she could find a place where there isn't any trouble. And then there's this tornado, and she wakes up in this fantasy world called Oz, and so on, right? That's the plot or dramatic answer, dramatic action answer to this question. That's usually how we answer this question. You go see a movie tonight, you see your friends tomorrow, and they say, well, how was that movie? You'd say, well, what was it about? And they'd say, well, first this happened and then this happened. And then, well, I don't want to tell you anymore because I don't want to spoil it, right? When we get to that spoiler alert point where we have to stop describing the plot or else we're going to ruin the movie for them, right? That's typically how we answer this. However, you could answer that by saying it's about a girl who dreams of finding escape from her mundane life and goes on a journey to a magical world full of wonders, but also full of danger. And in the end, she realizes happiness isn't found in faraway places, or in other words...
Oh, Auntie M, there's no place like home.
So that's the thematic way to answer that question. There's no place like home could be considered the theme of Wizard of Oz. Now you can make an argument for others, but let's just go with that for a minute. So what's the world of the play, or in this case, the film? A farm in Kansas in the 30s and a magical kingdom over the rainbow with a green city and a wizard's palace and a wicked witch's castle. And no, that's setting again. That's just a list of the locations. That's not the same thing as the world of the play. None of that tells you how it feels. That's just a list of places. A world of the play might be Dorothy's dusty, mundane Kansas farm must contrast with a fantasy world. Oz is exotic and wonderful, but bizarre and slightly disturbing. It must feel fantastic and magical, but at the same time extremely foreign and potentially frightening. Dorothy's initial excitement and wonder at having her wish fulfilled must soon be replaced with a deep desire to go home. Now we move into that third part of the paper. So we're going to talk about, well, how are we going to do that? Well, how about let's have boring old Kansas in black and white and have Oz be super saturated. So now we're starting to talk about color specifically. The costumes for Oz inhabitants need to be bright and colorful, but odd and exaggerated. The costumes for the people in Oz and Wizard of Oz are pretty strange, right? They're familiar and they seem to be kind of fairy tale-like, but they're very foreign and bizarre. The world should appear beautiful at first, but be full of hidden dangers. Soon the world must turn dark and perilous, and even seemingly innocent things can be dangerous. So the theme of Wizard of Oz is not fantasy by itself, but it could be fantasizing about some place better, some place where there isn't any trouble, only to discover happiness is where you make it. You could also make a case for trust in yourself. You have the power to make your wishes come true. That's Glinda saying. You could have clicked your heels together at any time. You could have gone home at any time. Or trust in the people who love you and you can always go home. Or beware placing undeserved faith in others. Or you must confront your greatest fears before you can find happiness, and probably several others, right? But the theme of the story must come from what it's about, not just words related to the story. So the theme of The Wizard of Oz is not fantasy or magical or colorful or somewhere over the rainbow or even I take a journey. Those are all really important words that are going to go into your world of the play. But it's because those are all about how the world needs to feel, but they're not thematic. So it feels magical, mysterious, foreign, bizarre, frightening. Oz has to be completely opposite to Kansas, beautiful and compelling, but also be weird and clearly not home. The world of the play has to be like this so that when Dorothy returns to Kansas, she realizes there's no place like home. Oz has to be exciting and tempting, and it needs to feel like her wish of a land where there isn't any trouble has been granted. If it looked too scary, she'd just slam the door and hide under the bed. Only after she's been enticed outside does trouble show up, and suddenly it's not so wonderful after all. So all of these design areas are working together to create a comprehensive world of the film where the story can take place. So the super saturated colors, the bizarre costumes, the strange landscapes, the soundtrack, the songs, all these things are all working together to create this fantasy world. So just to review here at the end here, theme simply means what the play's about. 2-3 sentences. What's the main theme? And it needs to be specific to that particular play, and it needs to be a useful starting off point. World of the play is simply how do those elements on stage feel in order to evoke the emotions that we want to get out of the audience. And then finally, the design or the directorial concept is how will each of the areas do things to actually make that world of the play, to evoke that emotional response. What are the choices the designers are going to make, or the ideas the director is going to give to their designers in order to create a world of the play where that story with that theme can be told. So if you work through that, just kind of keep that shape. It's fairly easy and straightforward to write these papers. So I'm going to look forward to beautifully written papers in the future.